Welcome back. Thank you for staying tuned once again. You're still watching the Afia Morning Show, and top of the morning to you all from wherever you're watching this program from. I'm Nathalie once again, and Oji, as always, is with me. Of course, it's a bright Tuesday and also quite humid and damp in the cold city. Oji, how are you doing?
I'm great.
Why did you shake your head like that? What were you agreeing to? The humidity or the brightness?
Both. You know, well, it's a good weather, by the way. You know, so cool, calm. And if you don't take your time, you lose so many things today because you want to stay back in bed and just enjoy. But you just have to step out and do what you have to do and make ends meet because you need to put some cheddar in your pocket, by the way. And also last day in the month of September.
Why are you suddenly whispering?
As well.
All right, good morning to you, Oji. And of course, we're not here alone. We still have a very special guest joining us. Well, he's a frequent face. We see him every day. Be quite aware that when we say bye on the show, we'll still have to say hello to him right after. And that is Cc Emechebe, Afia TV, producer, presenter, sports show. He also, of course, broadcasts an OAP on Afia Radio, the early morning sports show at about just after 7. Mr. Cc, so good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Natalie. Good morning, Oji.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Looking forward to the next few hours before we step into October the 1st, last quarter of the year. I would have said I'm excited, but I think I'm a bit pensive because of so many things to cover, but so many blockages here and there.
Yeah, the blockages. I mean, one would say we've already been in the final quarter for at least 30 days.
Yeah.
September, I think it marks the last quarter of the year. If you're really looking at it from the four-month calendar.
Yeah.
My math is not fantastic. I hope I'm not putting myself
You said 4.
on the peak. The 4s,
We're
right?
breaking it down in 3s now, right?
In 3s.
But thus far this year, this September, is 3 months to 2026.
Yeah, pretty much.
How do you feel? Have you attained all those heights you signed up for 1st of January 2025, all the resolutions and all that?
Yeah, you know, it's funny enough. Remember we had a discussion here concerning goals, and
that's why I'm asking this question.
yeah, easier said than done. No, goals are always there to be achieved, and it's not easy to run through them. Many things come in there, contingencies and all sorts of blockages here, like I mentioned, you know, but pretty much just keep your nose down. I've achieved a great number of things this year by God's grace. Some things left uncovered, but we know that time is still waiting for us. Yeah.
Is this such a thing as sportsmanship in politics, Cc? Is there such a thing as sportsmanship in politics?
Sportsmanship, there should be technically, because in politics, like we've always said, the time without number, in political corridors of power, you're not meant to have friends or enemies. You're basically meant to have allies or foes. So pretty much you're looking at the issue of alliances. So there should be a level of sportsmanship. Otherwise, these political opponents wouldn't find themselves in public settings, congratulating each other, hobnobbing together. Naturally, there should be sportsmanship, but unfortunately, there is seldom sportsmanship.
Okay, I don't know, maybe Nigerians were excited yesterday after the deduction of the 3 points from Bafana. Now, the question is, right, are we going to make best use of these, or we're going to go follow our hands again?
Well, it's not a question of what we will do, but what we can do. The possibility is there. It's much tighter right now for South Africa because they've been docked the 3 points by FIFA officially. They have 9 days now from yesterday, 10 days from yesterday, 9 days to appeal the decision. But what it means right now is that Benin Republic have taken their position on top, same number of points, but a superior goal difference. But Nigeria's fate is in their hands, and also in the hands of the Beninois, the South Africans, and Zimbabwe. Reason being that if Benin Republic face South Africa in the penultimate game of the qualifiers and then they draw, then Nigeria has a big opportunity to get maximum points.
Okay, so I asked a question about sportsmanship in politics because you're a sportsman. I'll be talking politics today. As we know, that's going to cascade all through our dailies this morning. Sure. Let's start with the Daily Monitor 2027. Jonathan, welcome to the race, but according to the presidency and specifically its spokesman, Bayo Onanuga, cautions ex-president to be wary of PDP sugar-coated cheerleaders who will abandon him midstream as they did in 2015. Chides Prof. Ghana for saying former president will defeat Tinubu to reclaim power. Court bars Patotomi associates from establishing a shadow government. On Met demands, ASU gives federal government 14-day strike warning. On leadership, Dangote Refinery Oil Union hold marathon meeting to end crisis. Power generation dips to 1,064 megawatts over gas supply cut. Organized private sector says strike is economic sabotage. Nigerians still have a confidence in electoral process, according to INEC. Nigerians still have confidence in electoral process, according to INEC. Police launch probe as Arise News anchor dies after robbery attack. Court says Utomi's shadow government illegal. Government declares tomorrow public holiday, cancels Independence Day parade. Fresh flood alert issued to 18 states. Jonathan free to run, but Nigerians recall his failures, according to the presidency. On Nigerian News Direct, court halts PENGASSAN from sabotaging Dangote refinery operations as strike cripples NNPC Limited, NUPRC, and of course Nigeria Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Nigeria at 65 utilized foreign exchange subsidy reforms to drive stability, inclusive growth. CPPE tells federal government. Federal government secures 250 billion naira for Kaduna-Kano light rail projects. NCDMB digitalization training set to benefit over 3,700 youths. Ododo unveils incentives reforms in health sector. ASU issues 14-day strike warning over welfare issues. On Daily Independence, Nigeria at 65, federal government lists Tinubu's feats, urges unity, collective participation, asks Nigerians to set aside divisions, work to build nation. Sule to governors, fight insecurity, we have enough funds now. Court declares Patutomi's shadow government unconstitutional. NBA to Supreme Court, make history, hear Rivers emergency rule case. Court stops PENGASSAN from cutting gas supply to Dangote refinery. Abuse allegation rocks Nako Sako at airport free zone. PDP will win massively, reclaim presidency in 2027. And that's according to the Oyo State Governor, Seyi Makinde. Nigeria's prosperity inseparable from North's future, according to President Tinubu. Presidency dares Jonathan to contest against Tinubu in 2027. Away from Daily Independent to Vanguard, this paper is eaten by a chunk of infographic there, but we'll look at what we have on top. Court stops PENGASSAN others from cutting gas supply to Dangote refinery. And lastly here, 2027 presidency, no automatic ticket for Jonathan in PDP, Benga Hashim Group.
Daily Trust. Northern leaders unite against challenges. Arise TV presenter killed in Abuja, robbery. Jonathan Steno, a disaster, says presidency. Court holds action as Dangote PENGASSAN meeting drags. Moving over to Nigerian Tribune. Dangote versus PENGASSAN. NLC joins fray set for nationwide action. Court stops PENGASSAN orders from cutting gas supply to Dangote refinery as FG meets disputing parties. FG unveils program to deliver clean off-grid electricity to over 17.5 million Nigerians. Cancels Independence Day parade. President to speak to Nigerians on October 1. Presidency welcomes Jonathan to 2027 race. Says Nigerians won't forget his failures. FG makes thesis submission mandatory for NYSC mobilization. British diplomat dismisses reports of genocide against Christians in Nigeria as false. CVR figures hit 6.2 million as Borno displaces Oshun. Oyo eyes 100 billion naira IGR as Makinde's reforms boost economy, education, health care. CBN OAGF deny releasing withheld funds to APC chairman, councillors as court restrains UBA from paying out Oshun local government allocation. ASU issues 14-day strike notice over unresolved issues. And lastly, right here on Nigerian Tribune, court declares Patutomi's shadow government illegal. The Guardian. Gas users groan as PENGASSAN strike crashes power generation exports. North gets bulk of 330 billion naira social support, says Tinubu. FG Council's Independence Parade insists Nigeria is still work in progress. FG denies releasing Osun local government allocation as court stops disbursement. Borno overtakes Osun as voter registration hits 6.2 million. Bandits sack thousands in Katsina as Huriwa faults peace deals. ASU issues FG 14-day ultimatum over 7-point demands. Court declares Patutomi's shadow government unlawful. Lastly, right here on The Guardian, debate over ethnicity competency depends as INEC section battle begins. The Matrix. Dangote refinery, PENGASSAN rift lingers. PENGASSAN, we are not aware of any court injunction stopping the strike. Dangote Group's impunity must be met with organized labor's resistance, says NLC. Governor Sule Ndume called for Dangote refinery's protection, says it is a national asset. FCC US Embassy explore a partnership to advance consumer protection. 2027 presidency takes jab at Jonathan. It is his inalienable right to contest, but Nigerians will remember his dismal record in office. Nigerian government cancels Independence Day parade. Strike looms as ASU issues FG fresh 14-day ultimatum over demands. Court rules Patutomi's shadow government plan illegal. Marriage is probably what I lost on my way to success, attributed to Don Jazzy. And 2026 World Cup qualifiers hope rises for Nigeria as FIFA deducts 3 points from South Africa. Lastly, the Punch. Dangote versus PENGASSAN. NLC mobilizes workers for strike against refinery. Labour places affiliates on alert as PENGASSAN shuts down NNPC, NUPRC, and MDPRA offices. NNPC, Dangote Refinery signed fresh 2-year crude deal. Nigeria at 65, FG cancels Independence Day parade. 2027, woeful record will haunt Jonathan, says presidency. Church members avoided me over Muslim ticket, attributed to Remi Tinubu. Court stops bank from releasing Osun local government allocations. Lagos guard faces trial for kidnapping employer's son. And lastly, tax reforms exempt food, education, agric, says FIRS.
I wouldn't know why you said it that way, but let's just proceed. Since you've chosen to whisper, the silent whispers on the morning show today. Thank you, Oji, for those headlines. Let's begin with the news right now. I think it's fair to start from Independence Day celebration, which is tomorrow, 1st of October. But right now, it's not much of a celebration, some would think, specifically because the parade that traditionally marks Independence Day has been cancelled by the federal government. And of course, that trickles down to the states as well, because where the president is not having that at Eagle Square, I mean, I would not imagine it happening at Okpara Square in Enugu. So you can imagine that's going to affect the parade, of course, at the sub-national level. As we did see on Democracy Day, there was no parade as well. So what's your appreciation of Nigeria at 65 as would be commemorated tomorrow with sober reflections as opposed to a march past?
Yeah, thank you very much, Natalie. And it's a good thing you raised up the issue of sober reflections, because I think with all the happenings in the country at the moment and the uneven horizon that we're looking at as far as Nigeria is concerned, there should be sober reflection. It's a normal thing. It should be expected, because there's not too much to celebrate. And I'm not saying this lightly. The reality on ground is this: you have to just wake up and smell the coffee. There are many promises that have been made, not too many have been fulfilled, and therefore, for different reasons, best known to those who have the power and who should have the willpower to fulfill those promises. Now, it's quite strange that Nigeria is turning 65, and last time I checked, 65 was the retirement age. Now, you have to retire from something. You have to retire from a fulfilled life, a fulfilled labor contribution and all whatnot. Now, but when you look at Nigeria so far, when you call us giants of Africa, we really do not have the right to go back and then claim, practically, that we're giants of Africa based on current happenings. Yeah, it can get better, and I hope it gets better, but The fact that I think the federal government made a wise decision. They may have their own reasons too. Probably the issue of letting people come to spoil the parade by picketing, going around and then protesting, because if we tell ourselves the truth, the state of the economy has given leverage to some people to voice their concerns, especially those who are not involved in prayer, in table manners, who don't have something that's blocking their mouths. They are maybe collecting from the largesse that comes from the government. But the truth of the matter is this: most Nigerians, the average objective Nigerian, has reason to reflect and think about the situation of the country, the economy, security, and everything in between. So I think that's one of the wisest things that this administration has done, to not have a parade.
All right.
Always.
Let's shift back as well to what affects the media industry, all of us indeed. A 29-year-old Arise TV producer, presenter, reporter, correspondent, colleague, anything, lost her life following an armed robbery attack at her residence in Katampe, Abuja. And of course, that was the beautiful former Miss Culture Nigeria, Somtochukwu Maduagwu. And Nigerians have received this with so much pain, especially those who have been watching her. I mean, I had actually watched a lot of her programs, and when I saw the photo, I did not really believe till I saw the actual live presentation as we're seeing on screen, and I realized that was her, right? Such an excellent reporter, model, Miss Culture turned presenter. She just joined the Rise family in 2024, and now she has become a victim of what some have called insecurity in Nigeria. What's your appreciation of this huge tragedy currently rocking the nation? As we've seen some of the Southeast governors, we've seen the Enugu State governor mourn this presenter, and of course other thought leaders scattered across the nation. What's your take?
No, without mentioning words, I'm gutted, absolutely gutted, because first of all, we lost a colleague. She's a colleague, a media, when I say she was, I say that with a heavy heart, was just yesterday, by this maybe a couple of days ago, we will be saying is, but now we're talking in past tense, because
she just retweeted a tweet like 20-something hours ago.
Just that's it. Really a very promising young lady who had her life ahead of her. She would have turned 30 this December, and it was just so heartbreaking. What some people would term the anyhowness of Nigeria in certain areas, security. But it still begs the question, because even in the midst of our grief, my grief particularly, because as a fellow media practitioner, you have to ask questions, because we need to just put the sentiment aside and ask objective questions. Questions like this: it was claimed that it was an armed robbery attack. What armed robber goes to a house in Abuja, in a decent location in Abuja, and then gets in there and then kills the inhabitant of the house without taking what they came for? Because if you're an armed robber, you're meant to, well, technically that's what armed robbers do. They go there and then under the force of arms, with arms, and then under duress, they collect what they did not work for. They collect jewelry, they collect cash, they collect all sorts of things that will be pricey for them, that will add in their own mind value to them. But nothing of sort was reported as the last time I checked. So it makes me start questioning, was this really an armed robbery? I'm not going to go toe the line of conspiracy theorists, but if it looks like a pig, smells like a pig, unks like a pig, it's not a warthog. I always say that for good reason. So could it be that she was targeted? Could it be that she was just at the wrong place well, it's her home, yes?
Yeah, I was wondering how that was going to be the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, that's why I had to track back and then say that. But could it be that she was just targeted for something that went south, that she shouldn't have been involved in? Many questions that are left unanswered. All speculation is valueless, but it doesn't take away the pain that we're feeling right now. This is not supposed to be happening. Those that are meant to be the arbiters of freedom of speech, free speech, because she's being a press person, a media practitioner, you should be able to voice what the masses are saying.
Facts are still very much unclear around this, but unconfirmed reports also suggest that they had taken her to the hospital and there was a chance that she could have survived, but they were asking for identification, the hospital, so to speak, before getting in there to treat her. Now, we don't know what hospital that is. The Arise TV team has not come out to actually clarify, but these unconfirmed reports suggest that they waited for identification, and in the course of all of that, she passed on. So it's really, really a huge tragedy for the entire media industry, for civil society organizations, for governments at various levels, for the people who watch her fans, her loyal viewers. Ultimately, the case has now been handed over to the Nigerian police force to investigate. How confident are you in the capacity of the Nigerian police to find something about this?
If I'm to estimate my confidence levels in terms of this getting to its reasonable conclusion, I think it's below 50%, in all honesty, and that's me being modest. Based on antecedents. Really, I feel sad about that because, I mentioned this. Some people would have maybe tried to attack me for saying this, but I said it deliberately, and you just confirmed that, the anyhowness. We're in a situation where life is not sacred anymore. Whenever somebody is brought in a critical condition, the first job, having sworn a Hippocratic oath as doctors, is to save life. That was not done. You're asking for identification. Why don't you start treating first of all, and then you follow through the remaining administrative, bureaucratic red tape and everything that's meant to be done? Save the life first, because that's why our hospitals were opened up. But at the end of the day, you're now going to another institution. No disrespect to the police, because like my mentor in broadcasting will say, my late mentor, Mr. Jikato of blessed memory, will say that the agility of a monkey is dependent on the availability of the branches. So I'm not attacking the police as such, but I know that the police force are mostly understaffed and underutilized, and also know they don't have enough resources to follow cases to the end. And that's why I have my issues. I don't know how they'll be able to do this the right way and then get a culprit, because at the end of the day, I don't even think this was a normal armed robbery case. I could be wrong, but I think with time we're going to see how this pans out. But I will be pleasantly surprised if the police get something concrete from this investigation and then bring the perpetrators to book, because this looks like the job of not just one person. It was robbers, alleged armed robbers. Right. So they must be apprehended, and then they must be questioned. We need to find out who's behind that, who are the puppets and who are the puppet masters. These are questions that need to be answered.
And it's so sad that we don't value lives in Nigeria. We often hear this story of people who come to the hospital, we have to ask, and more especially when there's a bullet. Keep asking all these nonsense questions. Treat the patient first. You don't know what transpired. Then, if it's a bullet injury, right? Call the police. Why are you treating? Why are you asking all this question, identification, police report this and all that? And they keep, the police department, they've said, there is a communique already. Whether it's a bullet injury or wound, treat, then call the police. First. But you see all these medical practitioners still bent on asking some stupid questions. Save the life first. We don't value lives in Nigeria. And then again, my issue here is where this thing is happening, in the FCT. People have been complaining about so many atrocities by some hoodlums and robbers and all that. If the FCT is not safe, where is safe in Nigeria?
This is a big question.
Where is safe in Nigeria? So if the FG is ruling out parades on Independence Day, then you see something salient that they don't want people revolting and all that, by the way. But on the papers, every other day we see these indicators as they're pointing out that the economy is stabilizing and this and that and all that. Are you not meant to celebrate it a little bit, that at least we're having a breath of fresh air?
Yeah, but no, they've basically told themselves.
I don't know, shooting themselves by themselves at this point in time.
Precisely, that's what they're doing. They're shooting themselves in the foot and simply showing that there's a disconnect between what they're saying and what's actually happening. Because when you feel the pulse of the masses, we know the truth. We know what's going on right now. This is not a shade on the government, but it's just doing our job, calling them to account, speaking truth to power, and telling them, look, you say that all is well for, ambience and also.
Let's celebrate the little we've achieved now. Let's do the parade. Let's celebrate the little you've been telling us that we have achieved. We have stabilized this. I've done this. Okay, the economy is this and all that. Let's celebrate a little bit of it now. So why calling out the parade? Why are you shooting yourself by yourself?
That's what they're doing. But unfortunately, let's keep our fingers crossed.
Let me get to Dangote and PENGASSAN's issue. But I'll ask you these questions. The news has been out there. PENGASSAN doing what they do. Dangote did what they did. Relieving of up to 800 workers and all that. And from the grapevine, some expatriates, being Indians, by the way, up to 2 million of them are going to be reinforced to take over these jobs. And they said reorganization. That's the tagline for the relief of those 800 plus workers, right? But now, the union on the other side were like, no, for us to call off whatever that we're embarking on, right? You have to call back those individuals. But Dangote is a businessman, a capitalist. He needs to protect his business. So whatever he's doing is to protect his own interests and his business. PENGASSAN, on the other hand, yes, there's a union. They have to protect those people under them, by the way. So, but now, my question is, who is right here? Dangote or PENGASSAN? What's your take?
It's a very difficult situation, considering the fact, like you said, Dangote is a businessman, a capitalist. He has to protect his interests, and also he has to. One of the things he's doing to protect his interests is to to minimize red tape and minimize persecution, minimize the stranglehold of unions, because unionism has the tendency to create a stranglehold, because most times unions are tools that are used by certain puppet masters. And that's what Dangote is trying to avoid. And Dangote is simply taking his claim as a stakeholder in the issues in the country. He's been helped marvelously by past governments, by being given a lot of leverage, but if not for the fact that he was a businessman in his own right, he wouldn't have utilized that leverage properly. He's a self-made billionaire actually in his own right. He has earned the right to make a voice, have a voice, and not be stifled seriously. Yeah, sacking up to 800 workers, I think is a stretch too far. There should have been more punitive measures, but I can understand the angle he's coming from. The 800 workers started identifying with the unions, whereas Dangote, now it doesn't make sense. Dangote has vehemently refused to be part of the union, that's PENGASSAN, but they are now aligned with PENGASSAN. So it's more like, a case of having two masters. And they are under his employ, but at the same time they're dancing to the tune of PENGASSAN. So they could be seen as fifth columnists if they're reintegrated in Dangote's group. So that's the standoff that's happening right now. PENGASSAN have their own faults for being high-handed and not being considerate in looking at Dangote's position as an asset. And let's tell ourselves the truth. Dangote is a national treasure. Look at the issue of the refineries. Look at he has monopoly in many areas. He's enjoying a certain level of monopoly or strong roots when it comes to many of his business, part of his business empire. But he's serving Nigerians. He's providing great employment for a huge number of Nigerians. Well, until recently when those 800 went away, to prove a point. But, I think both sides are at fault because they are battling. These are the two elephants that are fighting. The grass is suffering. And unfortunately, the people, including those 800 people that were laid off, are part of the grass. So I think they need to just find somewhere in between and acknowledge, we are not going to keep on doing this to the detriment of the public, the detriment of the people that were meant to be serving. Because if you're fighting, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. That's exactly what Dangote is doing. That's exactly what PENGASSAN is doing. I think that they should come to a meeting table and have somebody neutral supervise that meeting table so they can come to terms, find a compromise. And then, if those 800 workers are not going to be reintegrated, because I understand, like I said earlier, where Dangote is coming from, even though I'm not holding beef for him, I can understand where he's coming from. These guys are potential traitors. These guys that were laid off, they're like fifth columnists who could actually erode his business from within and start feeding PENGASSAN what they want to get from Dangote's group. So I think they need to find a way to reintegrate them into the sector without necessarily getting them into Dangote's group. I think there's something that can be done, but both parties are just being stubborn about it.
Right. The Daily Monitor 2027. Jonathan, welcome to the race, but according to presidency, spokesperson Bayo Onanuga is ahead of this story, basically daring the former president, Jonathan, to contest and try to beat Tinubu, reminding him of what he described as failures during his tenure. Did you think at the end of Jonathan's tenure that he came off as someone who had failed? And how do you feel about this sharp tongue of Bayo in this remark?
No, naturally now, if you're in this part of the world, you have to observe table manners because, first of all, he's the spokesperson of the highest authority in the land, the chief spokesperson, and naturally you have to be a representative. You don't have an opinion of your own. You just have to voice out what the president would always do. You'll be the first image maker of the president and the presidency. So, I hold no grudge against Bayo Onanuga for doing what he's doing. It's his job. You have to do your job so you can continue being on the payroll. But going as far as calling Jonathan a failure, yes, you could say that Jonathan was a relative failure because certain things under him failed. Now, I'm saying relative. It was a relative failure. But the question is now this. Was the failure something that originated from him, or was he hampered by forces beyond him? We talk about the issue of the Chibok girls, and this was just before the elections, conveniently before the elections. So these are failures that could have been engineered. He was portrayed as an incompetent man, a weak man, because of his demeanor. And then, of course, people even went as far as accusing him of dancing to the tune of his strong wife, Patience, Mama Patience, that we call Mommy Patience herself. Yeah. But, many things, allegations, and it's a normal thing. Mudslinging, impugning characters. It's something that happens from the opposition. It always happens, and it's quite sad that sometimes the opposition forget that they're no longer the opposition. They are still doing all this. So Bayo Onanuga needs to be a bit wiser. Yes, your job as the opposition is to undermine the gains and the inroads of the other parties, and that's what he's doing. But he needs to know that Nigerians are not stupid.
Thank you so much, Cc, for joining the review this morning. It's always so good having you, and I like how you dissect everything. How could you call someone possibly a relative failure? You have such a bad mouth, but you say it with such angelic
what did I do?
Table manners.
I was even going to get into the facts, but there's no more time. Let's get into the facts now. The first 2 years of Jonathan and these first 2 years of APC.
We'll have a special discussion around the facts.
Let's juxtapose and all that, but we're going to have that conversation again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cc. We'll juxtapose the facts subsequently. Thank you once again. You're going to kill us with English today, Oji. All right, the morning show returns in seconds as we do go around the region. Catch up with speculations in the Eyimba city. Is something happening to the leisure park? More on that when we come back. Stay tuned.